London police have arrested WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange.
It's Julian Assange. And Julian Assange.
Julian Assange, obviously a central figure in so much of the drama in the United States over the last 8 or 9 years. Of course, WikiLeaks, a central player in the release of the hacked emails from the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign, part of the Russian attack on the U.S. election. WikiLeaks also posted classified military information on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq.
WikiLeaks is the latest demonstration that a small group of people with a powerful idea can harness technology and affect large institutions. In WikiLeaks' case, it was the idea to aggregate state and corporate secrets by setting up an online electronic Dropbox where whistleblowers around the world could anonymously upload sensitive and suppressed information.
By February 2008, WikiLeaks had exposed Swiss bank Julius Baer for involvement in money laundering. It publishes internal documents to show that the bank was helping clients launder funds via the Cayman Islands. On November 2009, WikiLeaks releases a comprehensive archive of text paper messages recorded in the US on September 11, 2001. In 2010 alone, WikiLeaks had released around 750,000 confidential US military and diplomatic documents. Remember this, because it will be important later on.
This video, it shows a U.S. Apache helicopter crew in Iraq opening fire on a group of suspected insurgents who were standing on a street corner in Baghdad. Some of the men were armed, but 2 of them were journalists from Reuters.
Come on, fire!
Hey, Roger.
Keep shoot.
At least a dozen people were killed in the attack, some of them innocent civilians.
And while WikiLeaks was achieving its purpose to leak official documents, Julian Assange's personal life was about to start falling apart.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange arrested in Britain this morning to face sexual assault charges.
This is just the opening round in what will probably be a long legal battle over Julian Assange. The court hearing is to decide whether he should be sent to Sweden for questioning in a sexual assault case.
9 days later, on the 16th of December 2010, Julian Assange was granted conditional bail at the High Court, bankrolled by his supporters who paid 240,000 euros for his release. On Wednesday, May 30th, 2012, Julian Assange lost an extradition case to Sweden. Since he was facing deportation to Sweden, he feared that he would be extradited to the US on charges of leaking government documents. This resulted in Assange asking political asylum to the Ecuadorian embassy in London on June 19, 2012. From that day until his surprise arrest in London in 2019, he did not leave the 330 square foot rooms he called home for nearly 7 years. On the 19th of August 2012, Assange emerged on the Ecuadorian embassy's balcony for the first time and calls for US government to renounce his witch hunt against WikiLeaks. Later on that year, he again appears to say the door is open for Sweden in order to avoid extradition. In 2014, specifically the 16th of July, a judge in Stockholm upholds the arrest warrant against him for alleged sexual offense against 2 women. He later loses an appeal. On the 13th of March of 2015, Swedish prosecutors asked to question him at the embassy. The investigations into the molestation allegations are dropped due to time restrictions, and the investigation into suspected rape remains active. In 2015, Assange says his stifling lifestyle has rendered him depressed and anxious. He states that the walls of the embassy are as familiar as the interiors of my eyelids. I see them, but I don't see them. Assange says he often stays awake for 18, 20, or 22 hours at a time until he collapsed from exhaustion. The next year, on the 5th of February, the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention says Assange is being arbitrarily detained and calls on authorities to end his deprivation of liberty. The following month, the UK government asked for a review, saying the opinions was deeply flawed. This is later rejected. On June 20th, Ecuador reveals the Swedish authorities have officially requested to interview Assange. On July 22, 2016, WikiLeaks publishes Democratic Party emails. Also, Julian Assange, in the 7 weeks before, filled his time speaking to 80 visitors, including Russian state broadcaster RT and philosopher Slavoj Žižek. On the 9th of August, Assange files an appeal to a Swedish court, arguing the country must comply with the UN Working Group's finding. On the 14th of November, Assange is questioned over the remaining sex allegation at the Ecuadorian embassy by Swedish authorities in the 2-day interview led by Swedish persecutor Ingrid Iskren. On the 17th of January 2017, Barack Obama's decision to free the whistleblower Chelsea Manning prompts speculation Assange will end his self-imposed exile. On the 19th of January, 2 days later, Assange tells a press conference that he stands by his offer to go to the US, provided his rights are respected, which then is completely shut down on the 21st of April when the US Attorney General of the time, Jeff Sessions, says Assange's arrest is a priority for the US. On the 20th of March 2018, the Ecuadorian embassy suspends Assange's internet access, complaining that he interfered with other states' affairs. In August later on that year, the US Senate committee asked to interview Assange as part of his investigation into the alleged Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. On the 23rd of January of this year, lawyers for Assange say they are taking action aimed at making Donald Trump's administration reveal secretly filed charges. On the 5th of April, there are conflicting reports over whether Assange is to be expelled from the embassy, and on the 11th of April, Assange is officially arrested at the embassy in London after his diplomatic status is revoked. Assange has been held in custody by British officials since April, fighting extradition charges from the United States and Sweden. In the Department of Justice 18-count indictment, Assange was accused of conspiring and aiding and abetting former intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning in the release of classified information that was published by WikiLeaks in 2010, and also for his connection to the leak of some 750,000 confidential military and diplomatic documents. The Justice Department announced that it was charging the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange under the Espionage Act. The indictment of Assange is an offense on the First Amendment that is as banal as it is blunt. Even though Assange is a fundamentally unappealing protagonist, the use of the Espionage Act to prosecute Assange is an attack on the First Amendment. Prosecutions under the Espionage Act for leaking information to journalists have been rare. No journalist or publisher has ever been charged under the Espionage Act. But the Justice Department doesn't believe Assange fit either of those categories. But journalism, unlike say medicine, law, or architecture, is a profession that any person can practice. There are no licensing or education requirements, and journalists generally think that this is a good thing. The public can decide which journalists are worth reading or watching, and the law can intervene in those rare cases when journalism causes harm. The last thing we want the US government or any government to do is to start deciding who is and who is not a journalist. For the most part, the charges against him broadly address the solicitation, receipt, and publication of classified information. These charges could be brought against national security and investigative journalists simply for doing their job and doing them well. But journalism has not been collateral damage in this battle. It has been the target. The Trump administration has made that clear by jumping the fence that the Obama administration had merely approached and charging Assange under the Espionage Act for practices typical of journalists. It stands to reason that an administration that considers the press an enemy of the people would launch this attack. In attacking the media, it is attacking the public. The First Amendment, after all, doesn't exist to protect the right of Assange or me or anyone else to say whatever we want. It exists to protect the public's access to whatever we have to say, should the public find it of interest. The Freedom of the Press Foundation, the Committee to Protect Journalists, and famed Pentagon paper leaker Daniel Ellsberg were among many groups and individuals expressing concerns about what the charges could mean for press freedom. Put simply, these unprecedented charges against Julian Assange and WikiLeaks are the most significant and terrifying threat to the First Amendment in the 21st century. Freedom of the Press Foundation Executive Director Trevor Timm said in a statement, "The Trump administration is moving to explicitly criminalize national security journalism. And if this prosecution proceeds, dozens of reporters at the New York Times, Washington Post, and elsewhere would also be in danger."